Good morning, everyone. Bear with me today. This is a little bit of a different audience than I'm used to. It's either high schools or medical professionals at conferences. So, again, my name is Megan Heimerdinger. My family, Scott and Hayden over there in the yellow, started coming to New Heights in 2017, around October. When talking to Pastor Rob about what my theme of my faith story would be, we decided that it was going to be the giving and receiving of ministry. And in my faith story, I found that sometimes this giving and receiving are a little different than what you would traditionally think. So a little bit of background about me before we get started. I grew up in the Church of the Brethren. For those of you that don't know what the Church of the Brethren is, it's a Mennonite and Quaker background with that church, focusing on peace and simplicity. My family in the church, my grandparents were very prominent regionally and locally within the church. They were definitely the faith foundation for me. My parents participated in the church, but not exactly at home. We didn't pray at meal times, we didn't pray at bedtime, and there were no real discussions about Jesus or God. We went to church every week, and I participated by being the first sound girl in our church, so I was really proud of breaking the glass ceiling on that one. I was also in the choir, participated in VBS, and also Sunday school. Unfortunately, we did not have a very strong youth program at that time. It just focused on going to bowling and maybe some pizza, and that was pretty much it. We didn't have any in-depth discussions about God, which is one thing that is very special about New Heights. I also participated in church camp. I went from kindergarten all the way through my senior year of high school, and we'll have more details on this later to come. During high school, about my sophomore year, my parents started to have marriage issues surrounding infidelity as well as alcoholism. My parents were arguing, my dad moved out, and a lot of times I didn't even know where he was living at that time. When he was around, he would maybe come to my sports events and then sit at home and not really participate in the home. I ended up taking a lot of care of my two younger sisters at night because my parents wouldn't function essentially as parents at that time. I would make sure that they would get to church, make sure they got meals, and then make sure that they got to bed on time. My parents turned away from the church and anyone that would try to help. I remember once my pastor coming over to our house, and he just stood there. No one would acknowledge him and his presence there, and they wouldn't accept help from anyone. I became the fixer of the family, which led to abandonment issues and later lead to problems with trust, especially with men, and anxiety later in life. However, my escape for one summer every single year was church camp, Camp Emmaus. During that 1 week and all the summers, I was able to receive the gifts and ministry of God. This came through friends to last a lifetime, love from counselors, friends, and God himself that I wasn't receiving at that time, as well as spiritual guidance and knowledge growth. And best of all, I received a husband out of the deal. Who knew that the skinny 60-pound kid that I met in 5th grade would eventually become my husband, and I'm very thankful for him. I eventually went to college at Illinois State. I started out as a history education major. I thank God every day for making me realize that I was not supposed to be in history education. I later switched to athletic training, which for those of you that don't know, this is a profession where it involves a lot of time and energy. So when you see Aaron Rodgers go down with that $1 million arm, we're the ones running out there to make sure that that $1 million arm still functions the next day. My goal is to be a college athletic trainer and to be at the top of my profession. Again, breaking that glass ceiling. Again, it came with a lot of sacrifice, long days, traveling on weekends for games, and as well as other demands from the coaches and athletes, which is still true today. My faith during college revolved around going to Catholic church with my roommates. This was another receiving point of ministry in my life. It was way different than what I grew up with, but I still felt the spiritual benefits of going and was able to have in-depth conversations about God with my friends. And also the free dinners at the Newman Center were also a perk for poor college kids. And it was a way to connect with others. My first few years with marriage with Scott were non-traditional. I went to University of Northern Iowa for graduate school, And during this time, I was gone a lot on the weekends, and Scott was home alone. I one day received a phone interview with the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. The head of AT department was actually, his grandma was friends with my grandma back home in our hometown. So I knew that this was God saying, hey, this is where you are supposed to be going at this time. And I also felt that this was a stepping stone to the top. So we left everything behind and moved to North Carolina, which was a culture shock. Another receiving point of ministry that I had in North Carolina was attending a Baptist church. As you can see, I have made my way around religions. This was a small church with friendly people who genuinely cared, similar to New Heights. Again, an opportunity to grow as a couple was presented to us. We developed wonderful relationships with coaches and their teams who welcomed us since we were thousands of miles from home. Moving forward, Scott was unable to find a job, and I found out that I was expecting our first child, Hayden. So we decided that we needed to move closer back home to family. Scott found a job, and unfortunately, no colleges were hiring around the Madison area. So I applied for a high school position, which is a step down in the athletic training world, and I was very bitter about it for a long time. But my attitude eventually changes, which we'll talk about later. More changes came as we welcomed Hayden during a tornado warning. I now think this was a sign of the craziness that was about to ensue. I was challenged with postpartum depression and anxiety on top of an overly colicky baby who would not sleep, while trying to figure out a new job and my place amongst coaches and athletes. This is a very challenging time for us in our marriage, as I felt that most of my anger was focused towards Scott, and anxiety took over my life. Unfortunately, this resurfaced again with my second child, Eleanor, 2 years later. At that time, I felt like I wasn't worthy to receive the love of anyone, including my husband and God. I was ashamed in acting and feeling this way because I was a healthcare professional. You're not supposed to feel this way. It took a long time for me to receive help and realize that I am worthy of love, and I'm very thankful for a very patient husband who took a lot of time with my child and realized when I needed help. Over the years, the high school has definitely grown on me. It has become a giving ministry for me. I say it's giving ministry through bandages and love. I found many of these kids needed to be loved and cared for just as I did in high school. I found that becoming a place of solace for them and a listening ear is very important. A lot of these kids are dealing with depression and anxiety, just as I was and am, and also have been dealing with deaths of friends and stresses in the home. I've been helping them with homework, their resumes, and family and relationship issues. I feel as if I could sometimes consider myself a high school relationship expert. Although this is not the typical way of ministry, such as praying and reading scriptures, I'm still there to nurture and care for these kids when they need it. I've also received ministry from these kids and their parents by their kindness and letting me into their families. Prior to New Heights, we had tried many different types of churches. We found that some were too large and we felt lost in the crowd, and while others were pushing us to participate and volunteering us for things that we weren't quite ready for yet. This turned us off from church, and we actually didn't go to church for about 2 years. And this was very disappointing for us because we wanted to have our children in the church. We always saw the signs for new church, and one Sunday we decided, you know what, we'll try the 8 a.m. service. We were immediately welcomed and felt at home once we found that several people we knew came to New Heights. We felt good about this church, but we still felt like we needed a little push in the right direction to make sure that this is the church for us. However, God had a plan when he sent a young girl with a New Heights youth shirt into the clinic that I was working at that day. I saw her shirt and mentioned that we had been there for the first time last week. And lo and behold, she mentioned that she has a pretty darn close relationship with the pastor. And I felt that this is the time where, you know what, God again spoke and said, hey, this is where you're supposed to be and where you're supposed to be taking your family. Every Sunday when listening to the praise band since then, I had felt this push to be a part of it. This was something out of the normal for me, even though I had experience singing choirs and having the lead in high school plays. Since coming to New Heights, I have learned that this church is truly special. I'm excited to see my son today actually do his offering box for the first time, which is a huge blessing. The people at this church are amazing, and whether you know it or not, you are ministering to me and my family. I am constantly looking to all of you for examples of Christian parenting, which I had not always received. You have surrounded us with love and God's love, which is something at many times I felt that I had not deserved in life. You are accepting and always make us feel welcome. I have never once felt judged for my lack of knowledge surrounding God and Jesus. I also have a newfound appreciation for God's word and using it in my daily life and finding that God's word is becoming more relatable to everyday times. I finally feel that I'm being fulfilled spiritually. This receiving of ministry has pushed me to give ministry at new heights through being in the praise band and hopefully also in the youth setting one day. So in closing, you never know when you will feel the giving and receiving of God's love. It can be traditional or non-traditional, and you should be open to hearing that. A song kept popping up on the radio this week, and I feel like it was relating to my faith story, and sometimes I feel like we need a reminder about what the song mentions. It's by Josh Wilson, and it's called Dream Small. Dream small. Don't feel like you've got to do it all. Just let Jesus use you where you are, one day at a time. Live well, loving God and others as yourself, and finding little ways where only you can help. With his great love, a tiny rock can make a giant fall. Dream small. Thank you.